वेलकम बैक गाइस। आज का वीडियो it's not going to be interesting. It's going to be very boring because we are going to talk about the life source, the blood of our aquariums, which is salt. So grab a cup of coffee, maybe a notebook, and let's get on with the video. Okay, so the way we will take this video is very simple. First, let us understand what seawater is actually made of. Because if you're running a marine tank, understanding this is very, very crucial. Ki the water, we are replicating seawater, right? So we need to understand what the seawater is actually made of. So that's going to be section one. Second is based on आप जिस तरह का टैंक चला रहे हो, what is the right composition or the right levels or the right salt that you need to choose. Third section is within that, how do you choose the right salt? So it's going to be this simple. So let's get on with the first section, which is the chemistry of seawater. We always use a refractometer or a dipstick hydrometer or any other method to check the salt in our water, right? So wahan se let's start breaking down. So we talk about 1.025 specific gravity or 35 ppt, different terms. Now what does that mean? If I take 1 kg, mind you, 1 kg of seawater, right? Essentially, it is 96.5% water, which is H2O. 3.5% is the other elements, which we call as salt. So now the next jump we are going to take is on that 3.5%. अभी आपको समझ में आ रहा होगा when we say 35 ppt, 35 parts per thousand, what does it mean? So that's 35 ppt for you. So now whatever we are going to talk about in terms of the breakup of that salt is that 35% of this water, which is a salt aspect. Now, majority of your seawater is actually sodium chloride. In fact, if I take chlorine and sodium, it's roughly 86%, 55% and 31% roughly. 86% is sodium chloride. And other elements which form the basis of the salt are magnesium, which is roughly 7.5, 7.7%. Then comes sulfur. Now, this may be news for you. Sulfur is actually the fourth largest element in seawater, which is roughly 3.5, 3.7%. Now, all of these, it's not etched in stone. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप कहीं पे भी जाओ, you take out seawater, it will be same. It differs from part to part. Anyway, sulfur. Then we have calcium. हम लोग कैल्शियम को इतना emphasize करते हैं in our reef tanks and marine tanks. Calcium is actually only 1.2%. And after all of this, you are left with around 1.5%, which is basically your trace elements and the other minerals like your boron, strontium, zinc. There are also small traces of copper. Copper, I think, is 0.009% ppm in terms of ppm when it comes to seawater. And we get so scared of copper. Seawater also contains gold. In terms of ppm, it's 0.5 times 0.9 ppm is gold. So there are various other elements which comprise in that 1.5%. To summarize, I know ये बहुत in-depth and very confusing stuff, so let's put a summary slide on this, and I'll also try to put pictures, graphs. Salt is 35% in terms of weight of the seawater, that is 35 ppt. And in that 35 ppt salt may 85-86% is your chlorine and sodium, followed by magnesium, sulfur, calcium, and then the other elements which comes in. So that's the chemical composition of salt. Now, this is so important in the next section, that whenever now we are dealing with a marine aquarium, we know what that salt is made of. Now, before we go to the next section, now many of you would be wondering, यार इसने इतना सब ब्रेकअप तो दे दिया. No, we talked about magnesium, we talked about calcium, we talked about everything, but where does KH, DKH, right? Every salt packet has it, every reefer talks about it, every organism needs it. तो इसमें DKH क्यों नहीं है? This is what determines the real chemistry of seawater. DKH is not a part of your chemical composition. DKH is basically, dissolved organic carbon. That is the reason the ocean is one of the biggest carbon sinks. The CO2 we breathe out, हम लोग को बचपन में स्कूल में ये हमेशा सिखाया गया कि the plants take in CO2, give out O2. All the plants, including your Amazon, everything in this world, do that. But more than that, it's actually this ocean which is taking up a lot of carbon. So the DKH basically comes from the dissolved carbon, which gets converted to carbonic acid and then ultimately to carbonates. And DKH is the element, it's more like a buffering element. And the way it works is carbon and the calcium ions come together to form calcium carbonate. But it's the magnesium which acts as a buffer, and this is very important. Pay attention to this, because next topic or the next section, when we are talking about salt composition, this will come in very handy. The magnesium always acts as a middle pillar which prevents the calcium ions and the carbonate ions from mingling and forming calcium carbonate rapidly. अगर magnesium नहीं रहेगा, everything will become rate, right? Calcium carbonate and fall. So the magnesium acts as a middle section. So this is the chemistry. I don't want to go deeper than this because it will end up confusing everyone. But this is the summary. Okay, now the second section. And this is a section which I particularly wanted to do because I have seen इतने सारे लोग गलत salt use करते हैं. And I'll tell you why. अगर आपका system is primarily a fowler system, fowler मतलब fish only system, you have to maintain certain levels. इसके लिए I'll come to our salt. In our salt, the front page, इस पे भी थोड़ा लोगों को confuse होता है. We have given maintenance levels of two different types of systems, and the actual salt levels are here. Anyways, we'll come to that. If you're a fish only system, you have to maintain certain levels. If you are a fish and an anemone kind of a system, आपका level थोड़ा अलग होना चाहिए. If you are a reef, right? This video is not restricted only to India. It's audience बहुत जगह से. So I'm also talking about reef tanks here because we also export. Reef tanks का levels अलग होना चाहिए. उस पे भी type of reef. If you're a soft reef, if you're an LPS reef, if you're a mixed reef, if you're an SPS reef. So your salt choice is a function of multiple things. In general, there are certain levels which I personally like for any system. अगर आपका DKH, I'll start with the DKH because that is one of the most important factors. I don't like very low DKH. Some ocean in the world actually go as low as 5 DKH. There are no oceans in the world which actually goes beyond 10 DKH. But then why do we use salt which is 12 DKH? That's a question. Now, if you're a fish only system, or you're a mixed reef system, or you're any system, if you maintain in that median level, that is around 8, 8.5, you're good from a DKH perspective. Now, fish only system में DKH जरूरी है. which is a very weird question. DKH is essential not just because you know the fishes don't use them. DKH maintains the overall sanity of your water. It is important in regulating your other levels. It is important in regulating your pH levels. There are multiple functions of a DKH, of DKH in the overall system. So DKH of 7.5, 8.5 is a great place for any kind of system to be in. In a fish only system, you can take the liberty of going a notch lower, maybe around 5, 6 also is fine, but not advisable. Maintain at that 7-ish level if possible. Magnesium levels, personally, I like to keep it slightly elevated. अगर आपके सिस्टम में बहुत सारा inverts है, that is your shrimps and snails and other things, थोड़ा सा be in the same range of 1300 1350 ppm or even lower. 1250 to 1350 ppm is a great place to stay. I like to personally keep it above 1300 in my systems. It doesn't affect any invert that much. It's only after 1500 ppm that it becomes a little bit of a dangerous territory. Calcium anywhere between 380 to 480. The global standard is 440, but this is the range. Is calcium essential? Yes. Even in a fish only system, अगर आपका calcium levels बराबर नहीं है, DKH levels बराबर नहीं है, obviously then magnesium levels भी आपका बराबर नहीं है, then you will not get the real ocean look of coralline algae form हो रहा है. No, the reef, it's a reef which is forming. वो कभी look नहीं आएगा. It will look like just an aquarium with fishes thrown into it. So maintain these levels. It will be a great place for your overall system. To sum up, DKH between 8, somewhere in that range of 8, 8.5. Magnesium 1280 to 1380. Calcium, don't let it go below 400, ideally 400 to 440. 380 tak theek hai, but don't go lower than that. I like 400 to 440, great place to stay. Now, these are the levels that you need to maintain. So, based on what your tank is, now this is the general levels. If you're a heavy reef tank and आपका consumption heavy है, pump it up. Pump up especially your DKH levels and your calcium levels. Magnesium ज़्यादा consume नहीं होता. If you are actually maintaining these levels, it's the inhabitants which are consuming it. Magnesium consumption may not be very high. So dose magnesium based on requirement. Choose a salt with a higher elevated levels. If you are just a soft reef or a fowler, the levels which I told you as the base or mentioned in the packet is perfectly fine. So depending on your system, it's not necessary that हमेशा आप जाके 12 DKH वाला salt लो या आपका fish only या soft tank है. No, you're buying, heavy duty reef salts. Not necessary. These are the various levels you need to maintain. Choose your salt accordingly. Now this is the first part of choosing your salt. Now let's jump to the next section, which is the quality of the salts. Quality as in physical quality, as in the composition, as well as what do you need to look for. Okay, now we talk about the most interesting bit, which salt to buy. See, I cannot give you what is a good brand, what is a bad brand, especially as a manufacturer. But it's for you to analyze the salt that you are currently using based on these parameters. So it's more like a dipstick rather than anything else. Because we talk about science in these videos. So when you're looking at a salt, and this is my personal thought process, there are 3 main parameters I look at. 3 मेन पैरामीटर्स हैं. अगर कोई भी सॉल्ट हो, अगर ये 3 पैरामीटर में फिट होता है, देन वो अच्छा सॉल्ट है. नंबर 1 is mixability. The reason I'm saying mixability is वो आलसपन का बात नहीं है. If it is a good salt, it will mix well. What I have done is I've taken ये 250 200 ml का glass है. I've taken around 10 grams of salt in this. Let us mix this salt. और मैं ये जो कर रहा हूँ ये कभी मत कीजिए आप. You should never put water on salt. It should be the other way around. जब आप अपना salt water mix बना रहे हो, it should be basically salt going into water. But let us start mixing this. ये video है तो obviously you have the time running, so you can see how fast. And I'm just using some random mixer here. I'm not even using a mixing pump. So the mixability of any salt determines the quality. कि बाकी दोनों factor what I'm going to talk about, that is consistency and stability, is nothing but a function of this, right? So मैं इतना सा ही mix कर रहा हूँ इसको. You can actually see the particles actually roaming around. And I'll just hold it in the hand and talk. I should remember not to drink it. ये salt water है. So mixability. Mixability के बाद आता है आपका consistency. आप जब, and consistency again are divided into two parts. आप जब batch by batch जब आप salt खरीदते हो, every bag and every part of that bag should give you a homogeneous mixture. आज एक बैग खरीदा that is at 9 DKH and कल एक बैग खरीदा that is at 12 DKH. एक बैग में trace elements नहीं है. No, it has to be consistent. Second is आपने बैग रखा, 22 किलो का बकेट खरीदा आपने और you have bought a 10 kg बैग. ऊपर के लेवल में, because you know lot of the components may go and sit down. ऊपर के लेवल में अलग लेवल है, मिडिल में अलग लेवल है, नीचे अलग लेवल है. That should not be the case. Then comes the stability. By the way, here it is. I don't know how long it took, but you can see that it's already started clarifying. Any good salt should do it. It'll even clear up more and become transparent like this water as we talk. But anyway, then comes the stability. Now the stability element is so important. And what we do in our salt is we factor in for our Indian conditions especially. So, if you look at our salt, when it says 9 DKH, unlike other companies, we don't talk about 9 DKH when it's mixing. When it's mixing like this, by the way, it's already clear. This will be around 11 DKH maybe, 10.5 at times. We are factoring in for the higher CO2 levels in our country. हम लोग के major cities में our CO2 is as high as 400, 440 ppm. That is going to immediately react with your salt water. धब करके नीचे DKH नीचे आएगा, आपका pH गिरेगा, magnesium levels will start coming down because your calcium and carbonates are immediately starting to react. So that stability is very important. And once आपने mix करके tank में डाल दिया, is it maintaining the same parameters for weeks, months rather? Because when you're changing water, you are changing 10%, 20%. बाकी तो पुराना पानी ही घूम रहा ना अंदर. So that stability is very, very important. So, by the way, yeah, here it is. It's completely clear. I don't know how long it took, but I think this is the most important aspect. Your salt should mix immediately. It should not show any signs of precipitation. ऊपर काला dust जैसे ऊपर आ रहा है या नीचे जाके कुछ जम रहा है और you are seeing bubbles coming out of your salt. There's something wrong. Second, batch after batch, the salt should be the same, give you the same levels. Third, after mixing in your tank, levels disco dance नहीं होना चाहिए. And fourth, trace elements, which we know no one talked about. It should have ample trace elements. The last 1.5% जो हम लोगों ने first part of the video में बात किया था, it should contain at least all the major ones. Copper नहीं होना चाहिए. because most of these salts are synthetically made. Copper should not be there. Aluminum should not be there, which is also found in very, 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 very small amounts in seawater. अपने salt में नहीं होना चाहिए, but बाकी सब important trace elements, especially like strontium, your boron, molybdenum, little bit of zinc has to be there. These are the various elements. So if you see our pack, we have listed out by ppm, and this is after an ICP analysis. So and I'm not trying to say that no, this is the salt, but any salt which you choose should have these levels intact. So to sum up this entire video, hopefully I was not so boring. If you're still awake, thank you so much for hanging on. So we learned about the overall chemistry of seawater. We learned about the levels that our salt should, the attributes of the salt that you should shoot for, and when you're choosing a particular salt, a brand or whatever it is, what are the various parameters that you need to look at when choosing that particular bucket, packet, whatever that you're buying. And hopefully this video helps you. And let's take one more interesting topic the next time around. I don't want to talk about it because it's a little bit of a surprise. So let's see you the next time around.